The day Justin left me at home and went to find his ex-girlfriend, I had a high fever alone at home all night. When I woke up in the morning, I had lost my memory. I remembered everyone except Justin. 01 When I found out that I had a fever in the evening, Justin had already left. He told me that there was something urgent at work and he needed to work overtime. But he didn't know that I had overheard his phone call with Mona. Outside the quiet bathroom, I stood in the corner and listened to the faint sobbing of a female voice on the phone. Justin, there's a power outage at my home. I'm so scared. Could you come and keep me company? Then I heard Justin was silent for a while, and finally he said, wait for me. I stood in the corridor, looking at the pale light on the ground cast by the incandescent lamp, and didn't say a word. It was not until Justin was about to go out that I almost pleaded, I'm not feeling well. Could you please stay at home and accompany me? I was really uncomfortable. Yesterday, I got soaked all over in the heavy rain just to take an umbrella to Justin. Now I felt that even my breath was hot and I had no strength at all. But Justin didn't even turn his head. He bent down to put on his shoes and perfunctorily said to me, honey, I have something to do. You'd better have a rest by yourself first. Then he slammed the door shut and left without looking back. I was burning up and feeling dizzy at home alone. I called Justin several times but no one answered. Finally, I gritted my teeth and called my friend Luna. Before she arrived, I blacked out and completely lost consciousness. When I woke up, everything had changed. As soon as Luna saw me open my eyes, she cursed with red eyes, Justin is such a bastard. His girlfriend was burning up like this, yet he went to fool around with another woman. Yuki, if you don't break up with him this time, I'll just strangle you to death right now to save myself from being pissed off by you. She looked at me angrily. I was stunned for a moment and said in confusion, who's Justin? There was a momentary blank on Luna's face, and then she looked panicked. She held my shoulders tightly and said nervously, are you kidding? Yuki, this is not the time to make such jokes. I carefully recalled, but I couldn't find any memory related to this name in my mind. I shook my head blankly, I'm not kidding. Who's Justin? Luna's legs went weak. She leaned on the corner of the bed and took a look at me, then shouted in panic, Doctor! Doctor! Her brain was burned out by the fever. 02 After having a CT scan, I was sitting on the bed eating an apple while holding the examination report. Luna was looking me up and down in disbelief beside me. Damn it. You're really something. I thought you wouldn't forget Justin even if you forgot your parents. But it turns out that you remember everyone except him. I frowned. From what you said, this Justin was still involved with his ex-girlfriend even when he was with me. Was I out of my mind to cherish him so much? Luna sneered. Yeah, you were out of your mind. Probably there's only water left in your head. No matter how much I scolded you, you wouldn't listen. Well, it's good anyway. Just dump this scumbag this time and let him and that woman be together forever. I nodded and said casually, okay. Just as I finished speaking, the door of the ward was pushed open. A tall man in a black suit rushed in with an anxious look on his face. The moment he saw me, his expression changed and he walked towards me with big strides. Yuki, how are you? I looked up at him. He was a stranger to me. I didn't know him. Although he was quite handsome with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, he was the type I liked. It seemed that this was the Justin that Luna had mentioned. The scumbag who I had been chasing after for 3.5 years, who still couldn't forget his ex when he was with me, and who left me alone at home when I had a fever. From what Luna said, I hardly heard anything good about Justin. All I heard was how he had mistreated me and how he had ordered me around. Luna had been my friend for over 10 years. We had been inseparable since junior high school. She wouldn't lie to me. I looked at Justin with a bit of disgust in my eyes. To be honest, the image of the lovesick person that Luna described made me annoyed even when I heard it myself. I really couldn't understand how I could have become such a pathetic lovesick person. I had been so enthusiastic about a man who still had feelings for his ex and couldn't completely cut ties with her. I had been working hard without complaint for so many years and had never mentioned breaking up. How could I be like that? Even if this man was exactly my type, I shouldn't have been such a person. Justin was stunned when he saw my look, and his steps stopped for a moment. After a while, he walked over and there was a look of heartache and guilt in his eyes when he looked at me. Yuki. I'm sorry. I really didn't know you were so seriously ill yesterday. Luna was standing aside with her arms crossed, not saying a word, watching us as if she was watching a good show. I frowned. The moment I thought that this man had just got out of his ex-girlfriend's bed, I couldn't help feeling sick. I dodged his outstretched hand and said in disgust, "Who are you?" Justin seemed to be stabbed by my look. He paused for a moment and then continued, "I know you're angry with me. It's my fault this time. I promise I'll make it up to you in the future, okay?" Luna sneered. "Here comes the playboy. What's the matter?" "Mona's home doesn't have a power outage anymore, so you finally have time to come back." A hint of panic flashed across Justin's face. He quickly held my hand and explained, "I have nothing to do with Mona. It's just that there was a power outage at her home yesterday. She doesn't have any relatives or friends here, and she was a bit scared, so she called me. I didn't do anything with her, Yuki. Believe me." I pulled my hand out forcefully, wiped it on the bedsheet in disgust, and said in a deep voice, "Justin, right? I had a fever last night and my brain was damaged by the fever. I lost my memory and don't remember you anymore. Please show some respect, okay?" 03 At first, Justin didn't believe that I had really lost my memory. He thought that I was just angry and lying to him, so he tried to coax me for a long time. It was not until I was so annoyed that I told him to get lost that his expression suddenly changed drastically. He looked at me, and it seemed that he could hardly maintain his expression. "You want me to get lost? Yuki, you really don't remember me?" When these words came out of my mouth, he seemed shocked, as if I had never spoken to him like this before. Perhaps my attitude was too cold. In the end, Justin had to accept this reality. He sat dejectedly on one side, looking very sad. "How could you forget me? It's impossible." Luna couldn't stand him and mocked, "Maybe even God couldn't bear to see it anymore." "Justin, you don't deserve to be called a human being. When I went to Yuki's place last night, she was almost burned stupid. If I had gone a little later, God knows what would have happened." "Where were you at that time? Were you sleeping with your ex-girlfriend in her arms at her home? I suggest you get lost quickly and stop disgusting us here." Justin dejectedly grabbed his own hair and said in pain with his head down, "I'm sorry, Yuki. I'm sorry. I really didn't know you were so seriously ill." I looked at him coldly. To be honest, after losing my memory, I couldn't imagine at all why I had loved him so much before. I lost my dignity and myself just to stay by this man's side. And he abandoned me when I was seriously ill just because his ex-girlfriend said that she was afraid of the dark. Justin seemed to be stabbed by my look. He avoided my gaze and sadly covered his face, but I didn't feel anything in my heart anymore. I calmly said to him, "Since I don't remember you anymore and you only have your ex in your heart, let's part on good terms." My words seemed like a blow to him. Justin suddenly raised his head, and his expression changed greatly. His eyebrows were furrowed as if they could crush a fly. Without hesitation, he said, "No." I was puzzled. "Don't you like your ex-girlfriend named Mona? I heard that I didn't agree several times when you mentioned breaking up with me before. Now I'm helping you two get together. You're free now." However, Justin's expression didn't show the relief and happiness of having his wish fulfilled. Instead, there was a deep pain in his eyes, as if it wasn't he who had abandoned me for his ex-girlfriend, but I who had abandoned him. "Yuki, how could you say such a thing? I have nothing to do with Mona. He seemed unable to explain himself anymore and sat dejectedly with a pale face. I thought it was a bit ridiculous. Obviously, he was still having an ambiguous relationship with his ex-girlfriend in front of me. Why was he putting on such a show of being deeply in love now? Justin walked up to me as if he had suffered a huge blow. He wanted to hold my hand but didn't dare to. He could only stand beside my bed and plead, "Don't mention breaking up anymore, Yuki. The doctor said that you might recover your memory after losing it. I made a terrible mistake this time. Give me a chance to make it up to you. Let's be good together. Didn't you want to go to Italy? When you get better, I'll take a leave immediately. Let's go to Europe and travel for a month, okay? I looked at this regretful man and wondered, why are you doing this? Don't you like Mona? Justin was stunned, as if he was stumped by my question. I continued, if you don't like her, then why were you with me and still left me to find her just because of her words? If you like her, then why are you acting like this now? I frowned. Justin, what on earth do you want? Justin looked at me blankly. His lips moved, but he couldn't say a word for a long time. It was as if he didn't even know his own feelings. I was annoyed when I saw him like this. The lovesick me described by Luna was unimaginable even to myself. However, that passionate love disappeared completely after just a small fever. Now, looking at this man who I was supposed to have loved for 3 years, I didn't have any feelings left, only a subconscious disgust. I'm not discussing with you, I said bluntly. I'm informing you. Now I don't have any feelings for you at all. You're also responsible for me becoming like this. How could I possibly continue to be with you? For some reason, looking at Justin's painful expression, there was an indescribable sense of pleasure in my subconscious. It seemed that the memories about this man had disappeared, but the hurt he had left me was engraved in my bones. I almost said it maliciously, Justin, you make me sick like this. Justin looked as if he had been punched in the face. He stared at me in disbelief, as if what I had just said wasn't just a sentence but a knife that had stabbed him right through. I saw his face turn pale in an instant, but I didn't feel anything in my heart. According to Luna, he was the kind of man who would lose his mind if he lost just one hair. I would brave the rain to take an umbrella to him. I would stay up all night to make medicinal porridge for him to drink just because he said he had a stomachache. I would follow him thousands of miles to this city where I had no relatives or friends. Suddenly, I felt that love was really something both tough and fragile. When love was alive, no matter how much it was tortured or beaten, it couldn't be diminished at all. However, just a high fever made this love disappear without a trace. The man in front of me had such a sad expression, but I didn't feel any heartache for him at all. I didn't even look at Justin. I just turned over and lay down to sleep. During the days when I was in the hospital for observation, Justin almost lived there. He took a leave and stayed by my side without sleeping or resting. I ignored him all the time. After being discharged from the hospital, I went directly to his home to pack up my things and rented a house to live in by myself. When I left, Justin didn't stop me. He just stared at me fixedly behind me, with a sad look in his eyes. Will you come back? He asked me. I looked at him indifferently and then got into the car and left directly. Through the rearview mirror, I saw that he had been standing on the roadside, looking in the direction of the car. I began to be curious about our relationship. I wanted to know what exactly had made me so infatuated with this man in the past 3 years and why our relationship had become so complicated. Fortunately, I had the habit of keeping a diary. Although the memories about Justin had disappeared completely, I had left several thick diaries during these 3 years. At night, I lay on the bed and flipped through my diaries. The records about Justin were actually easy to find because most of the content in these diaries was about him. March 26, 2019. I saw a guy in the library. He's so handsome. March 27, 2019. I fainted due to low blood sugar today. Someone gave me a piece of candy. It was the super handsome guy I saw yesterday. Damn it. He looks even more handsome when I'm close to him. There are literally stars in his eyes. March 28, 2019. That guy from yesterday came again and asked me if I was feeling better. I felt so nervous that I could hardly open my mouth when talking to him. Oh no, it's the feeling of having a crush. Page after page was filled with a girl's feelings. It turned out that Justin had broken into my heart with just one piece of candy and left no room for anything else. After that, all my diaries were about Justin. He often went to the library and read very profound books. Some of them were even German books that I couldn't understand at all. In order to get close to him, I even taught myself German and tried to strike up a conversation with him awkwardly. Justin was always a bit cold and never took the initiative to talk to me, but I was always happy to keep approaching him. He seemed to be in a bad mood during that period. He even frowned when reading books and looked a bit gloomy. I always racked my brains to find topics to talk to him, told him some jokes that weren't funny at all, and still insisted on inviting him out for dinner even after being rejected several times. After persisting for 3 months, he finally smiled helplessly at me when I found another excuse to go out with him again. That was the first time he smiled at me and also the first time he agreed to go out and play with me. That day was the beginning of our relationship. I looked at the pages of the diary one by one. The content on it was completely strange, but the emotions were so familiar that they hit me right in the face. I would feel sad when Justin rejected me, and I would be extremely happy when he agreed to my requests. Even the handwriting carried a sense of excitement. Such sincere feelings were recorded on paper day after day. Through the slightly yellowed pages, I could even see myself with a still childish face, lying in front of the desk, frowning or grinning, writing down everything about Justin stroke by stroke. In fact, the first 2 years when I was with Justin were quite happy. Although he was always indifferent and never said that he liked me, he still took good care of me in life. He would cross half of the city at night to buy me a cake just because I said I wanted to eat it. He would also take off his coat and put it on me on the street in the early autumn when we were walking together, frowning and scolding me for only caring about looking good and not knowing to wear more clothes. On a deep winter night, he would hold me and warm my cold hands and feet until I fell asleep. At that time, my diary was full of sweetness, and happiness almost overflowed from between the lines. I found the person I loved, and I also thought that he loved me too, although he never said it. But so many girls liked him. Why did he choose me among them all and never mention breaking up with me? I sat on the bed and read every sentence. Those were the happiest times for me in these 3 years. Then, Mona came back, and everything was turned upside down. At first, I didn't pay much attention to Mona. She was an ex-girlfriend who had broken up for 2 years. I didn't think she would cause any trouble. Justin didn't hide it from me either. When Mona returned to China, he even took me to have a meal with her. I had always thought that they were just ex-lovers who had parted on good terms and shouldn't appear in each other's lives anymore. The person Justin loved now could only be me. However, after that, Justin's attitude towards me changed. He no longer put his coat on me, no longer held me, and wouldn't accompany me for a walk anymore. Every time I tried to hug him from behind, he would break free from me and say impatiently, "It's hot. Don't cuddle up to me while sleeping." Overnight, my lover completely changed. His love for me seemed to disappear like a passing cloud and vanished quickly. Justin began to contact Mona more and more frequently. Many times when I woke up in the middle of the night, I would find that there was no one beside me, and Justin locked himself on the balcony, frowning and smoking. There were cigarette butts scattered all over the ground. Even though I was right beside him, he still looked so lonely. At that time, I knew that the person in his heart was never me. How naive I was back then. I always thought that as long as I could stay with him, he would eventually recognize his true feelings, but the truth was far crueler than I had imagined. One night when I got up, I found that Justin was gone again. Just as I was about to go out to look for him, I heard a low-pitched quarrel coming from the balcony. During the more than 2 years with Justin, his emotions had always been reserved. Sometimes I even had a feeling that because he didn't care about anything, nothing could make his emotions fluctuate. Even when we quarreled, he just watched coldly as I got angry by myself. He never quarreled with me or coaxed me. In the end, I would always calm down by myself and come back to him sheepishly, and he wouldn't hold it against me anymore. This was the first time I saw him so out of control. I hid in the corner and watched him argue with the person on the phone with red eyes. There were extinguished cigarette butts all over the ground. He said excitedly, "You fucking left just like that, leaving me here like a dog. And now you come to me as if nothing had happened? Mona, do you fucking know how I lived through that year? You're so heartless." Mona said something on the other end of the phone, and Justin rubbed his face wearily and said, "Yes, I was with her just to piss you off. So what? If you don't want me, there are plenty of people who are eager to be with me." I stood dumbly in the corner, my mind blank. This sentence was like a sharp arrow, piercing through my heart and nailing me firmly in place. Only then did I realize that the so-called mutual love that I had thought for more than 2 years was just a way for him to vent his anger. Justin was angry that Mona left the country without hesitation, so he found me to make her angry. No wonder so many people chased after him, but he chose me. It turned out that it wasn't that he chose me on purpose. It was just that I chased him the hardest and he happened to need such a tool to piss Mona off, so he just picked me. It wasn't that he chose me. As long as it wasn't Mona, anyone would do. And the so-called sweetness and happiness over the years, my sincere love, in his heart, was just eager to be with him. I huddled in the corner, my mind in a mess. When people are extremely sad, they become numb instead. The pain in the heart and the churning in the internal organs all calmed down. I just felt very tired. I was so tired that just standing like this had already drained all my strength. I even thought in my muddled mind that actually Justin was right. Over the years, it was indeed me who had been eager to be with him. He had never taken the initiative to respond to me. I thought that he didn't say he loved me because he was shy. It turned out that he just didn't love me at all. The person he loved from beginning to end was someone else. I forgot how I got back to bed that day. That night, Justin didn't come back to the bedroom to sleep. The two of us, one was on the balcony and the other was in the bedroom, couldn't fall asleep because of the person we loved. However, when I saw him again in the morning, I still forced a smile and asked him calmly as usual, "What would you like to eat in the morning? Shall I make you fried eggs?" Now when I think about it, I can't even understand why I was so humble back then. Obviously, I was also a very proud person. But later I understood. In the back and forth business battles, Victor quickly fell behind. Judging by this trend, he was bound to lose in 6 months. Many forces that had been attached to the Victor family came to show their favor to me. Victor couldn't sit still any longer. Just at that moment, a foreign wealthy businessman named Hendricks suddenly emerged. With Hendricks's introduction, Victor ventured to invest in the overseas market and the market value of his company rose by several percentage points. Victor was in a great mood and invited all the prominent people to dinner. Lynn was so worried that she was pacing around anxiously. "How can you still be in the mood to drink tea? If this goes on like this, you'll lose everything. Shoo, be civilized." Grandpa Aiden said that doing business is like being a person. You need to keep your composure. Now is the time to have a good rest. You'll be busy soon. 1 month later, Hendricks ran away with the money. I wasn't surprised at all because in my previous life, the Victor family also insisted on cooperating with this Hendricks whose origin was unknown. To avoid affecting the stock market, our family filled the deficit at that time. This time, Victor put all his eggs in one basket and invested even more than in the previous life. Tsk. He was as stupid as ever. Having no way out, Victor could only borrow money, but he didn't dare to borrow from people he knew. He was afraid that the fact that the money had been run away with would be exposed and then there would be no way to turn things around. He was like a trapped beast in a dead-end alley. He had no time or energy to tell whether the people coming to him were good or bad. So when a mysterious person was willing to lend him money, he was willing to agree to any conditions. As long as he could earn the money back, fill the hole and pay off the debt, it would be okay. But was it that easy to make money? The Victor family had been in the limelight in recent years and had offended quite a number of people. Soon, Victor's parents were arrested and thrown into prison for corruption. Victor blocked me downstairs in the company. His eyes were bloodshot and he was smoking. He really smelled bad all over. "Was it you?" Victor's voice was hoarse. I smiled. Over the years of managing the accounts of the Victor family, I had already noticed that their accounts didn't match up. Master Victor is still as reluctant to use his brain as ever and just likes to make subjective assumptions. Right, I was going to report it originally. What a pity that someone else got there first. Why don't you guess which insider around you did it? Victor was left speechless by my retort. After a long while, he asked, "Rosalie, did you delete me on WeChat?" Rosalie. How disgusting. Absenting from work for 3 days is regarded as automatic resignation and the labor contract will be terminated. Victor, don't you know how long you've left me hanging? Not wanting to look at Victor anymore, I got into Aiden's car. Suddenly, a message came on WeChat. Aiden sent 2 words, check in. It was childish but cute, and I liked it. 3 months later, the Victor family couldn't pay back the money and had to use the company to pay off the debt. When I went to his company, he was sitting dejectedly on the ground. Rosalie, you just came to laugh at me, didn't you? Not really. I looked around. I'm here to inspect my company. Victor's eyes widened. The mysterious person was you. Oh, you finally used your brain. It's not easy, brother. After knowing that the mysterious person was me, a glimmer of hope rekindled in Victor's eyes. He said harshly, Rosalie, just wait. I'll make a comeback sooner or later. Just wait. Perhaps because I was always around him, he often thought that since I could do it, there was no reason why he couldn't. In fact, it's the comprehensive effect of many factors such as opportunities, platforms, resources, connections, plus luck and hard work that lead to a result. Where are there so many chances to start all over again? After the Victor family fell from power, Victor was kicked out of the core group chat. In the past, he didn't want to talk in it, but now he didn't have the chance to talk in it. This battle was won beautifully, and even Grandpa Aiden praised me for being capable. The title of the Crown Prince of the Beijing Elite Circle is just a title. Now the person in power is a woman. It's me, Rosalie, because at that time, I loved Justin so much. I knew that once I opened my mouth, I would be giving Justin a legitimate reason to break up, and I couldn't lose him. I just couldn't bear it. So I could only sew up my broken heart by myself and bleed silently in my heart. Breaking up was a kind of fulfillment for Justin, but for me at that time, it was no less than an execution. Since then, this relationship has become a kind of torture. Both Justin and Mona were such proud people. Although they loved each other, neither of them was willing to be the first to yield. This tug-of-war lasted for a long time, but I was the only one who got hurt. I was cut to pieces and covered in blood. If the previous 2 diaries were full of bright happiness, then this one was full of gloomy pain. Once, I huddled in the corner alone. My heart was already broken into pieces, but I still held on to Justin tightly and wouldn't let go. It was like drinking poison to quench thirst. Justin, to me, was that bottle of poison wine. 04 I put down the diary. I couldn't remember the story in the diary at all, and that kind of mood had long disappeared. What was recorded here didn't seem to be my story, but the story of a stranger. When I read it again, I just felt pitiful and ridiculous, but I couldn't empathize with it at all. How stupid. I covered my face. I couldn't believe that I had been such an idiot and so embarrassing. This emotion made me unconsciously feel hatred when I saw Justin again. Because when I saw him, I would think of the days when I was as humble as a dog, and this man was the chief culprit who trampled on my dignity. He really turned me into a dog that he could call whenever he wanted and dismiss whenever he liked. I looked at Justin's pale face and thought to myself, what the hell for? It had been more than half a month since Justin came to see me last time. When I saw him again, he looked much more haggard, with a look of exhaustion all over him. The dark circles under his eyes were bluish black, there was stubble on his chin, and his bloodshot eyes were looking at me. I didn't know if it was my illusion, but I actually saw a hint of pleading in his eyes. I sneered in my heart. How could that be possible? When had Justin ever pleaded with me? Between us, I was always the one who pleaded. But it was different now. I looked at him coldly and said in disgust, why are you coming to me instead of being with Mona? Justin seemed to be burned by my look and hurriedly lowered his head. After a moment, he said in a hoarse voice, Yuki, let's talk. I reached out to close the door. I have nothing to talk to you about. Let's part on good terms. Isn't this what you've always wanted? Justin blocked the door and pleaded, it won't take long. We've been together for 3 years. Even if you want to break up, we should at least make things clear, right? I thought about it and thought it was right. The end of this relationship needed an explanation. It wasn't for the present me, but for that girl who used to bite her lips until they bled at night and didn't dare to cry out loud. I opened the door and let Justin in, and Justin seemed to have drunk alcohol. He smelled strongly of alcohol, and he even walked a bit unsteadily. He threw himself onto the sofa, rubbed his face, and his voice was hoarse from smoking too much. Yuki, I've just realized these days when you weren't around that I really can't let you go. I'm willing to make it up to you. He raised his head, his eyes red. Could you please give me another chance? He looked so sad, as if he was the one who had been hurt all along. I felt a surge of anger in my heart for no reason. How could he show up as if he were the victim? Obviously, I was the one who had been hurt all the time. I mocked, Justin, have you also got your brain burned out? Don't you remember what you said to Mona on the balcony? Justin suddenly raised his head. I held up the diary and repeated word by word, I was with her just to piss you off. So what? If you don't want me, there are plenty of people who are eager to be with me. Is Mona having a quarrel with you again now? Do you need me, who's so eager to be with you, to piss her off again? Justin was struck as if by lightning. You heard that? I sneered, you were shouting so loudly that even a deaf person could have heard it. Mona left you in the country like a dog when she went abroad. You were reluctant, so you found me to make her angry. Was I such a useful tool? I beg you, Justin. I stared at him fixedly and said with hatred. I have no enmity with you. I was devoted to you for the previous 3 years. What deep hatred do you have against me that you keep tormenting me like this again and again? Could you go and harm someone else instead? The pain in Justin's eyes grew layer by layer. His face turned ashen, and all the color drained from his face in an instant. It's not like that. I didn't mean to use you to piss her off. I was, he couldn't go on and hugged his head in pain. Yes, at first, I was with you with the intention of pissing Mona off. I admit it. But these days when you weren't around, I suddenly realized that I hadn't thought of Mona even once. All I could think of was you. I couldn't eat or sleep. Whenever I opened or closed my eyes, I saw your face. Yuki, my feelings for Mona were probably just a kind of youthful not reconciled, which turned into an obsession. I've just realized my true feelings now. I do like you. He raised his head, his eyes full of pleading. If it had been before, I would probably have gone crazy with happiness when I heard him say this. The diary recorded it in detail. In the past, when I really couldn't hold on anymore, I would imagine that one day Justin would really fall in love with me. At that time, I would make him unable to reach me and make him kneel in front of me and beg me, but now that this day had really come, I had forgotten all those past events and I didn't feel anything in my heart. I just thought it was ridiculous. Love that comes too late is better off not coming at all. If a simple sentence like this could erase all those hurts, then what were those silent cries in the middle of the night for? I looked at him and said softly, Justin, so what? He was stunned. I continued, just because you said you've realized your true feelings, do I have to happily go back to you? You don't need to apologize to me. I stood up and looked into his eyes, saying word by word, the Yuki who loved you died on the night when you left her alone at home because of Mona. Justin swayed all over, and a flash of unbearable pain appeared in his eyes. I pointed at the door and said, please leave. Justin left in a daze, as if someone had taken away his soul, leaving only an empty shell. Now that I've stepped out of this relationship, I can more or less understand what he meant. It's nothing more than that the things we can't get are always the best. Did he love Mona that much? I used to think that he really loved Mona deeply, but now it doesn't seem so. If he really loved Mona that much, he could have taken this opportunity to be with her. In my opinion, his feelings for Mona were just like what he said. He was just someone who was used to being chased by others. When he was dumped for the first time, his not reconciled lasted for a long time and turned into an obsession. Even this obsession couldn't compare to his self-esteem. He had never bowed his head to Mona or tried to win her back. And what about me? It didn't seem that he liked me as much as he said. It was just that he had gotten used to being with me, and when I left, he felt uncomfortable. I pulled aside the curtain and found that Justin hadn't left. He was still standing under a phoenix tree downstairs in my house. The hem of his khaki coat was fluttering in the wind. He had lost a lot of weight and looked rather lonely standing there. The wind outside was getting stronger, and there was the sound of raindrops hitting the window. It was raining. However, Justin still hadn't left. He seemed to be unaware of it. He smoked one cigarette after another, and the cigarette butts flickered on and off in the gloomy weather. Soon it started pouring, and his cigarette was extinguished. He just stood there motionless, letting the heavy rain soak him through. As the night grew darker, there was almost no one around. Under the dim yellow streetlight, he was the only one standing there as if fixed in place. Suddenly, a text message came to my mobile phone. It was from Justin. "If I go through all the hardships that you've suffered, would you be willing to forgive me once?" I watched coldly as he stood in the rain and then pulled the curtain shut with a jerk. What's the point of putting on this act now? The harm I suffered won't be reduced by a single bit. In the past, I was afraid that he would get wet in the rain, so I braved the heavy rain and crossed the whole city to take an umbrella to him. Now, seeing him soaked through by the heavy rain, I didn't feel anything anymore. I just thought that what goes around comes around. I didn't expect Mona to come to me. When I received Mona's message saying that she wanted to talk to me, I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't want to have anything to do with this woman, so I simply didn't reply to her, who knew that she somehow got my address and blocked me when I went downstairs for a walk. I looked at the woman wearing a long windbreaker. She was wearing sunglasses, and her bright red lips were clear and delicate. She was a woman with an aggressive kind of beauty. I began to understand why Justin was so not reconciled about her. To put it bluntly, Mona and Justin were actually the same kind of people. They were born superior. Whether it was their appearance, family background, or abilities, they were destined to be a cut above others. They were used to being chased by others and also used to being proud. Perhaps between her and Justin, it was a kind of attraction among the same kind. Yuki, right? Hello, I'm Mona. Mona stretched out her hand with wine-red nail polish, slightly raised her head, and her face was cold. I frowned and didn't reach out my hand. I had a natural aversion to this woman. Although all the memories about her had disappeared completely, the subconscious hostility hadn't disappeared. She and Justin had hurt me like 1,000 arrows shooting at me at the same time. My heart was already riddled with holes. Even though I had lost my memory now, those old wounds still hadn't healed. When I saw her again, my mood sank to the bottom in an instant. I pretended not to see her and walked straight past her. I don't like Mona, not just because she's Justin's first love, but also because she had no qualms about interfering in our relationship even though she knew Justin already had a girlfriend. People like her are always self-centered and never care about whether they hurt others. They have no moral bottom line and are extremely selfish. Mona called out to me from behind, "Wait. I want to talk to you about Justin." I turned around and looked at her coldly. "I've lost my memory. If you like Justin, you can have him. I have nothing to talk to you about." Mona smoothed her hair and curled her lips. "I don't think you want to be watched by others here. I just want to say a few words to you and then leave. I won't pester you." I was a bit annoyed, but I was also afraid that if I ignored her, she would keep coming to me. Seriously, I really didn't want to see her or Justin ever again. "There's a coffee shop over there," I said impatiently. "I'll give you half an hour. After that, don't come to me again." Sitting in the coffee shop, Mona gracefully stirred her coffee with a small spoon. I didn't like her attitude. Mona always gave me a sense of superiority, just like Justin used to be. "I'm sure you know about me and Justin," Mona said with her chin slightly raised. "I was with Justin for a shorter time than you two, about a year or so. Did he ever confess his love to you?" "Of course not. I chased Justin for several months before he reluctantly agreed to be with me. He didn't even give me a definite answer. He just nodded." It seemed that Mona didn't need my answer and just went on talking to herself. "Justin is quite annoying. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. He chased me for half a year. When I went to class, he would sit next to me. When school was over, he would follow me. When their basketball team won the championship, he ran straight to me and kissed me forcefully in public, making everyone know about it. He insisted that I be with him." The Justin she described was so strange to me. In front of me, Justin always seemed to be a bit cold. He never admitted my existence outside, never posted anything about me on Moments, never introduced me to his friends, and never kissed me in public. I always thought he was just naturally cold. So he could be passionate too, even though I had already forgotten him. When Mona said these things, I couldn't help but picture the young Justin in my mind. He was full of an irresistible dominance and arrogance, and he kissed the girl he liked in public on the basketball court. I felt a slight pang in my heart. The feeling was strange yet familiar. Mona smiled slightly, as if mocking me for being just a third-rate supporting role who should exit in their fairy tale-like love story. That's just how he is. He never cares about losing face or not. If he likes something, he must get it. Later, I went abroad. I heard that he drank at home for 3 days and was sent to the hospital with gastric bleeding. She sighed and lowered her eyelids. He's such a proud person. He never bowed his head to me. He would only use other ways to annoy me. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Listening to her words that seemed to be full of pity but actually hid disdain, I smiled. Oh? He never bows his head to anyone? Yesterday, he came to beg me to forgive him and stood in the rain all night. I pretended to be surprised. Don't you know that? Mona suddenly raised her head, and her face changed instantly. I watched her shocked expression and took a sip of coffee with a smile. It seems you don't know Justin that well. Well, it's understandable. After all, you've been apart for so many years. Mona's fingers tightened, and the joints of her hand holding the coffee cup turned bluish white. She managed to keep a calm expression on her face. I'm not here to argue with you. Since you don't remember Justin anymore, there's no need for you to pester him, right? Your relationship started as a mistake. It's time to let him get back on track now. I sneered. What's the use of telling me these things? Now it's Justin who's pestering me, not the other way around. If you have the ability, make him go back to you. If not, just stay put. This woman really pushed me to my limit. Whether before or after losing my memory, she always hurt others with such a reckless attitude. Mona, are you addicted to meddling in other people's relationships? I stood up and looked down at her sarcastically. As soon as I said this, everyone in the coffee shop turned their eyes to us in surprise. The girl beside us had an expression of someone ready to watch a drama and whispered excitedly to her companion, "Is the mistress here to negotiate with the legitimate partner? Damn, how shameless." Mona's face turned livid. She gritted her teeth and said reluctantly, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy?" I ignored her and turned around to leave directly. "Since you insisted that I come, you can pay the bill yourself." I walked ahead, and Mona was still chasing after me, probably afraid that I would say something shocking again on the street. She didn't dare to come close to me but just followed me at a distance. It seemed that she planned to argue with me again when I entered the corridor. I was so annoyed that I was just about to turn around and make it clear to her. Suddenly, from a distance, I saw a person leaning against the tree downstairs, with a cigarette between his fingers and white smoke surrounding him. It was Justin. Well, now all 3 of us were here. Justin saw me from a distance. At first, a smile appeared on his face and he was about to wave at me, then he immediately noticed Mona behind me, and the smile on his face disappeared instantly. His hand froze in midair. He immediately put out the cigarette butt and threw it into the trash can, then walked towards me with big strides. Mona also saw Justin. For a moment, her face turned pale, but then she immediately regained her composure and greeted Justin with a smile. What a coincidence. Justin ignored her and stood in front of her with a frown. "What are you doing here? What did you say to her?" Mona couldn't maintain her smile anymore. She said reluctantly, "Nothing much. Just chatting casually." Justin suppressed his anger in his tone. "I told you not to come to her." "What on earth do you mean?" I watched coldly from the side. This was really something new. In the past, Justin always said this kind of thing to me. He repeatedly warned me not to go to Mona, and I really listened to him and never went to find her. Now the person he warned had become Mona. It was really a turn of events. The roles of the 3 of us had been reversed. Mona probably felt embarrassed to be scolded by Justin in front of me. Her face fell immediately, and she looked at Justin with an unfriendly tone. Justin, what the hell do you mean? You were the one who chased after me back then and now you want me to leave? What do you think I am? I folded my arms and watched the show. Justin glanced at me and lowered his voice, stop making a fuss here. I won't come to you again. We've already broken up anyway. Mona clenched her fists tightly. You say it's over just like that? Then what was all that before? She turned her head and stared at me, shouting, Justin contacted me every night when he was with you. Do you know what he said to me? There was a malicious curve at the corner of her mouth. He recalled the past with me saying that he hated me for abandoning him and that he was with you just to spite me. Enough. Justin interrupted her loudly. There was uncontrollable anger in his eyes. Have you had enough of making a fuss? I haven't. Mona's voice was even louder. Her voice trembled slightly, and her eyes began to turn red. Justin, you were the one who came to me first every time. You're the one who started it all. Now you want me to leave so casually. You're so heartless. It was getting dark. The autumn night was already chilly, and there were only a few people around. The warm yellow street lamps lit up. A glint of tears flashed in Mona's eyes. She looked at Justin with red eyes and choked. Didn't you tell me that you were with her just to spite me? Now that I'm back, why are you still coming to her? Justin was at a loss for words. After a while he said gloomily, I'm sorry for you. I was just reluctant to let you go. I mistook that reluctance for love. Now I realize that I've always loved Yuki. When you left, I was just reluctant. But when she left, He touched his heart blankly and said hoarsely, I couldn't bear the pain here. It felt like it was hollowed out. Now I know what love is. I can't live without Yuki. He looked at Mona. Let's just forget about it. We should have let it go long ago. Mona suddenly raised her eyes. I saw a tear fall from her eye. She looked at Justin with hatred in her eyes. After a moment she said in a trembling voice full of resentment, Justin, you're always like this. Do you think I went abroad for no reason? I never felt your love at all. You just thought that only I was worthy of you. You were just used to chasing after the best. From the beginning to the end, you never loved me at all. Tears fell from her eyes one after another, but she still stubbornly wiped them away. She just looked at Justin despairingly. People like you don't know what love is at all. You don't deserve to be loved. Yuki doesn't even remember you now. This is your karma. With that, she took one last look at Justin and turned around, staggering away. Her thin back looked lonely and desolate. The atmosphere froze for a moment. Justin smiled bitterly and walked up to me, saying in a low voice, she's right. I deserve it all. This is my karma. Even though I resented this man in my heart, seeing this always high-spirited man looking so haggard as if he had become a different person, I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for him. But that was all. I didn't say anything more and turned around to walk away. The wind was getting stronger and stronger, blowing my hair into a mess. Suddenly, I felt a bit annoyed in my heart. Justin's voice behind me scattered in the night. He said, Yuki, I'm willing to atone for my sins. Please. I opened my eyes wide. In my impression, Justin had never begged anyone before. The word beg didn't exist in his dictionary. He had always been so proud, a person who was almost conceited with pride. How could he say, please, to me? I stopped in my tracks. Just as I was about to speak, I heard Justin shout in alarm, Yuki, get out of the way. I was pushed down from behind. After a loud noise, I hit the curb on one side hard, and my vision went black as I felt dizzy. I turned around anxiously, only to find that a flower pot where I had just been standing behind me was shattered on the ground, and a small pool of bright red blood was slowly gathering under Justin's head. He lay on the roadside with his eyes tightly closed, showing no reaction at all. The flower pot had been blown down by the strong wind and was supposed to hit me. But after Justin pushed me away, it hit him on the head. My mind went blank in an instant, and tears welled up in my eyes. I pushed Justin in a daze and anxiety. Hey Justin. Justin. Justin didn't move at all and showed no response. I fumbled to take out my mobile phone in a flurry. My fingers were trembling so much that I pressed the 3 numbers, 120, several times before getting through. Hello? I couldn't stop my tears from falling. Building 18, Phase 3 of Wan Jinghui. Someone has been knocked unconscious and has a wound on the head. Please send an ambulance quickly. The ambulance arrived very quickly and reached downstairs in 5 minutes. 2 doctors in white coats quickly carried Justin into the ambulance, and I also got on it and sat beside him. The pale light in the ambulance made Justin's face look completely bloodless. His usually ruddy lips turned pale. His head was still bleeding. His black hair was clotted together, and there was still wet blood on his forehead. He lay there with his eyes closed and unconscious. At this moment, a long-lost, tearing pain came from my heart. The memories had disappeared, but loving this man had become my habit, engraved in my bones and blood. Once a crack was opened, those long-lost emotions spread densely. My vision was already blurred. I watched as Justin was carried out of the ambulance and directly pushed into the operating room. Only at this moment did I realize that memories could be forgotten, but love couldn't. The 2 hours outside the operating room were like years. I felt that my mind was in a mess, but it also seemed that there was nothing in it, just blank. I could only stare blankly at the red light on outside the operating room. In an instant, the past memories flowed through my mind continuously. I wanted to grasp them, but couldn't hold on to anything. Finally, the flood-like memories converged into a face. Justin's face. When I came back after paying the fees, Justin had already been pushed into the ward. His face was pale, and his lips were slightly chapped. He had already lost a lot of weight in these days and looked rather empty in the hospital gown, almost looking a bit strange. I sat beside him with my eyes getting a bit teary. Hey! Just as I was about to cry, Justin's weak voice rang out. Clearly, his whole head was tightly wrapped with gauze and he looked terribly miserable, yet his eyes were full of a smile. Why are you crying? I said stubbornly, none of your business. I just feel like it. Justin closed his eyes to rest for a while and then reluctantly opened them again. His voice was so weak that it was almost inaudible. Yuki, will you forgive me please? He looked like he was on the verge of dying. For a moment, I was so panicked that I was just about to agree. However, for some reason, the word forgive got stuck in my mouth and I just couldn't say it out. Justin lifted his eyelids to look at me, and a flash of disappointment appeared in his eyes. Just as I was about to speak, the doctor came from behind and said to me, "You're the family member, right? The patient is okay. The flower pot just scratched the skin. A CT scan of the brain has been done and there's no impact. But there might be a bit of a concussion and he still needs to be observed." I was stunned. Nothing serious? The doctor glanced at me. What are you a bit disappointed? I was dumbfounded and quickly waved my hands. No, I looked at Justin on the hospital bed. He was pretending to sleep, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help rising constantly, and his eyelashes were trembling. Damn it. I was cheated. All my tears were wasted. I put on a cold face. Okay, I got it. Only after the doctor left did Justin dare to open his eyes. He smiled apologetically and took my hand. I'm sorry. He lowered his head and said with a bitter smile, you haven't worried about me like this for a long time. My heart trembled, and for no reason, those sleepless nights came to my mind again. Subconsciously, I shook off his hand. Justin didn't have any relatives here. During the days when he was in the hospital, I took care of him. Mona also came once. I didn't know what she and Justin had talked about. I just saw that when she came out, she gave me a complicated look, and there were traces of crying at the corners of her eyes. I didn't say anything and walked into the ward. Justin was sitting on the hospital bed looking out of the window. When he saw me come in, his eyes brightened slightly. Yuki. I sat on the chair beside his bed, not knowing what to say. Justin tentatively said, I've already made it clear to Mona just now. She won't come to find me again. I looked at him without saying a word. Justin continued, I've thought a lot these days. Strangely enough, getting hit on the head somehow made me clearer-headed. He gave a low laugh. Actually, Mona saw it more clearly than I did. All along, perhaps I never loved her. I was just used to getting the best. Everyone was in a relationship, so I wanted to be with the most beautiful and impressive girl. Actually, when we were together, I just thought that it should be like that. I've never been so worried about anyone like I am now." Justin, wearing the hospital gown, sat on the bed with his head down. He seldom had such vulnerable moments, as if he was completely baring his heart to me. "Later, she went abroad. Actually, what I felt more in my heart was just resentment. I had never been dumped before. I thought. It was so embarrassing." He smiled bitterly. "Now that I think about it, I was so stupid. I could never figure out my own feelings. Even with you, it was only after you left me that I realized that I had liked you long ago. I didn't know what to say." "You've already recovered your memory, right?" Justin's smile was bitter. I looked at him. After sharing the same bed for 3 years, we knew each other almost better than we knew ourselves. It wasn't strange that he could tell. "When did you know?" Justin twitched the corners of his mouth. "In the ambulance." His eyes showed a hint of nostalgia. He wanted to smile but couldn't, and finally could only say reluctantly, "The way you looked at me was the same as before." I felt a pang in my heart and remained silent. Justin raised his head and forced a smile, but no matter how you looked at it, that smile was so reluctant. "You still love me, right?" I looked at him and said firmly, "Yes." When the memories came back, the love came back as well. I didn't want to love this man. Loving him had left me bruised all over, yet I was deeply trapped and couldn't extricate myself. A glint of light flashed in Justin's eyes and then quickly dimmed. "But you won't forgive me, right?" I thought for a while. I stood up and walked to the window. The leaves outside the window had already turned yellow and formed a thick layer on the ground. Looking at the bare branches, I suddenly and for no reason thought of that story. The child in the hospital bed said that when the last leaf on the tree fell, his life would come to an end. Now Justin was alive and well, but something had died. Our relationship had died, and what was dead couldn't be brought back to life. I turned my back to Justin and said softly, "Yes. I remember now. I still love you, but I won't forgive you." Before, I was blinded by love. After losing my memory, I realized how wrong I was. There's more to life than just love, and love isn't worth my trampling on my dignity like this. I turned around and looked at Justin seriously. "Justin, what's missed is missed. Mistakes can be corrected, but time can't be turned back. I can't act as if it never happened. If I were with you again, maybe I would think of how you left me, who was sick, at home just because of Mona's words every day. There would always be this thorn in my heart that I couldn't get over, and I wouldn't be happy for the rest of my life. If I forgave you," I walked over to hold his hand and said calmly, "I couldn't forgive myself. I've suffered enough." This was the first time we had such an open and honest conversation since we broke up. We both bared our hearts completely to each other. Justin's eyes were red. He seemed unable to bear the weight of my words. He held my hand tightly and pleaded hoarsely, "I won't do it again. I really won't. Just this once, okay?" Suddenly, he broke down and buried his head in my hands, crying out loud. His whole body was trembling uncontrollably. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please, I beg you." His scalding tears fell on my hands, and my heart trembled from the heat. I choked and said, "I used to love you more than I loved myself. But now, I think I should love myself first." Justin's body seemed to collapse inch by inch. He suppressed his sobs and hugged my hand, crying softly. This man who had always been strong and proud seemed to finally have his back bent. He took out his most precious dignity, but it was too late. Everything couldn't go back to the way it was. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and hugged him for the last time. "You'll still meet the person you love. I hope you won't miss it next time." With that, I forced myself to stand up, not daring to look back, and walked quickly out of the ward. Behind me, the pain in Justin's crying voice was almost overflowing. He shouted hoarsely, "Yuki, I can't live without you." I took a final look at him. He was wrapped in the empty hospital gown, with red eyes and crying in a wretched state. He was just like a stray dog that had been abandoned. Just as I was left behind by him back then, I turned around and walked out of the ward. 06 I never saw Justin again after that. He never showed up in front of me again. But I always had a feeling that he was always by my side, the corner of a windbreaker shone at the street corner, the cigarette butt scattered downstairs. He never let me see him, but I could always find the traces he left behind. From the initial unbearable pain to later on, I gradually got used to it. I used to always think that I couldn't live without Justin. After going through all this, I found that I seemed to live quite well without him. I fell in love 2 more times later, but there were always various problems and we broke up in the end. When it came to the third relationship, we finally got married smoothly. This man wasn't as outstanding as Justin, but he always put me first. His cell phone password was my birthday and he always let me check it whenever I wanted. He had never had anything to do with other women. He would prepare surprises for me on my birthday and tell me gentle stories before going to bed. He would also get down on one knee on the beach and take out a diamond ring to propose to me. The days when I was with Justin became more and more distant. I thought of him less and less often. Sometimes when I occasionally thought of his face, I really didn't feel any stir in my heart at all. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Those pains had faded away. I knew that I had finally let go. It turns out that time is really the best and also the cruelest medicine. No matter how unforgettable the love is or how painful the sleepless nights are, they will all be worn away in the end. On the night before the wedding, I received a text message. If he treats you badly, come to me. I'll be waiting for you forever. Then, as if feeling that this message had a bit of a curse-like meaning, another message came, wish you happiness. It was from an unfamiliar mobile phone number, but I immediately knew who sent it. I was lost in thought when my husband beside me leaned over and asked, what story would you like to hear tonight? I quickly deleted the text messages and threw myself into his arms with a smile. The story of the Little Mermaid. In the fairy tale, the prince made the Little Mermaid, who had her heart full of him, break into foam with a broken heart, but in reality, the abandoned Little Mermaid will always find the person who firmly chooses her.